Welcome everyone to the New Jersey Candidate live stream. We try to go live most days. This week we went live Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're gonna go live again next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 6:30. My name is Lana Leguía. I'm the host of the live stream as well as a candidate for office. I'm running for District 24 in New Jersey, and I'm joined here with Vic Kaplan, who's running for a New Jersey governor. Dustin Maggard, who is running for District 8 down south, will be joining us in a few minutes. And we also have a guest today, Nick Carducci, who has some questions for us. So welcome, Nick.
Hi, Lana. And thanks, Dick and Dustin, for having me. I hope you guys do well in your election.
Thank you. And if anyone in the audience who's watching has a question, you can put it in the chat. You can email me. You can message me. I have my phone right here. I check regularly for questions. But for right now, we're just going to listen to Nick and see what questions he has for us.
Great. I have about 7 questions. Some of them I briefed you guys beforehand, but some of them are surprise. So that'll be fun. Starting out. Um,
Wow.
Starting out. New Jersey faces persistent deficits with tax revenues sometimes covering as little as 50% of the spending budget. Would you consider shifting towards a progressive consumption tax instead of taxing income and property so that we can balance the budget, eliminate corporate tax havens, and make bigger businesses pay their fair share of taxes instead of get cushy employee wage and real property development write-offs?
Right, that's it. And thank you for that question. So my position on taxation would be that I would support reducing spending, and I think the best way that could be achieved is with gradually replacing the state income tax with user fees. I think that would lead, of course, to the reduction of spending on a state level, and I think that if the income tax can be gradually abolished, and we see 9 states not having a state income tax. I really believe that that would allow the local governments also to dramatically reduce the property taxes. We have the highest property taxes in the country, and I'd like to see them reduced. And I think the best way to achieve that is by significantly reducing the state income tax. Again, this would require, of course, spending cuts. And replacing the actual state income tax eventually with user fees. Now, my view regarding any types of taxes is that I really want to see the reduction and getting rid of as many taxes as possible. I think we as a state, we have more than enough taxes. We have the gas tax, we have the sales tax, we have of course, the state income tax. So we have tire taxes. I mean, if I start listing all the taxes that we have, that probably would take a while. But the point is that my goal is to reduce and abolish these taxes, not to have new ones. I'm not generally a fan of any types of sales taxes because I understand that they are regressive in a sense that they affect more people at the bottom, which is why, on a national level, I was never a supporter of the fair tax, so to speak, because I know that even the supporters of the fair tax, they support it having come with prebates. But to me, that's basically would mean putting the entire population on a dole and becoming welfare recipients. And that is not what I want to see. Plus, I don't really think our inflation is high enough as it is. I wouldn't want to see the government print a whole lot of money and make direct payments to people, which of course would lead to even more inflation that we already have. So my goal is to see the reduction of as many taxes as possible. Certainly see the abolition of the state income tax, which we did not have in New Jersey until 1976, which was meant to actually pay for education. We ended up both with the state income tax and the highest property taxes in the country. And I just don't think it's right to have multiple sources of funding education and to a point where now the property taxes are the highest in the country. I think that my goal is to see the state income tax gradually reduced and then finally abolished. I think that is doable. In terms of the sources of revenue, we can use tourism. There are other sources we can use as far as revenue go. Those 9 states that I mentioned, they have different ways of collecting revenue. And so like the example of a user fee would be the toll roads, right? So you're using the road, and you're paying the tolls for the road. So you're paying for the service that you're using. Another good example would be when you go to the movies, right? You pay for the price of a movie ticket. So that would be a sort of an analogy of a user fee, right? When you go to a museum, now we do have museums that are privately funded, where when you come to the museum, you're asked to pay for it. So that would be another example of a user fee.
Yeah, and just to add my 2 cents, I agree with you, Vic, with everything you said. But just to add a little bit, just this year, our assembly, our legislator, I mean, has passed higher taxes on gambling, on cigarettes, on liquor, on beer, on everything that people, have vices with and consume on a regular basis. And so New Jersey spending keeps going up and up and up, and so they need to take more and more money from people who have to purchase things, have to purchase items, and there's no end in sight, right? What people are usually concerned about, like when I talk to people, are like, what are we going to do with fire and EMS, or these services that everyone has to have access to at some point in their life? Well, income tax doesn't pay for those things a lot of the time. For most townships, it's those services are paid by your property tax. People don't really realize like what their income tax is actually paying for, even on a federal level. They're not really like, where does it go? They don't know. And a lot of the income tax actually just goes to people's pensions on the state level. It doesn't actually pay for services, and a lot of the services that it does fund are incredibly inefficient. And so as a libertarian, when it comes to social services that people who are marginalized or vulnerable that potentially could use, I think that charitable organizations, churches, even just individuals are much better at helping one another than the state is. Just to add, I agree with everything that Vic said. That's the only thing I can add.
Unfortunately, I forgot what I was going to say right after what you said, but I wanted to ask, what's the difference between a user fee and it just sounds like a socialist state-owned enterprise?
The user fee, though, that actually wouldn't be a socialist enterprise. When you go to buy movie tickets, you pay the price for a ticket. That would be an example of a user fee. It's not, you're using for the service that you're paying. So at any point that you're using a service, right, it doesn't come out free, right? So that's I see it just as that. It wouldn't be a socialist enterprise. Now, if somebody wants to make an argument over socialist enterprise, I can definitely see taxation where people are being forced to pay for services they don't use. That seems to be having more in common with socialism, which is the government control of the economy, as opposed to having the government provide services where they charge only for those services being used and not for anything else that an individual is using. To me, that would seem to be a more fair system, because sometimes people say, like, why should I be paying for the services I don't use? Like, I'm not sending my kids to school. I don't have kids, and why should I be paying for the services I'm not using? You do hear that from some people. I think to me, it seems like this would be a more fair system than the one we have right now.
Unless you have something
No.
to add, Nick, go ahead, because I don't want you to forget.
Yeah. Well, now I remember what I was going to say is that the voucher that I don't know if the feds talk about it or the state talks about it, but it amounts to $10,000. And I did research, and we spend about $30,000 on each kid. So that could be a quick solution. But on the taxes, I think that it might be better to tax everyone uniformly and not single out certain industries. Like I hate taxing even gas or trying to tax people's vices too. But in the Constitution, one of the I don't know if you're a Federalist or not, but one of the one of the words that they use is uniform taxes, and that's interpreted multiple ways, but I read it how I want to read it to explain my ethics, but I digress. So that's the first question. I guess we have about 6 more, so I guess I'll continue on. All right.
Well, we have an hour.
Yeah, well, we have
we have plenty of time.
we got plenty of time.
So Vic, if you want to answer that, but I just
Yeah,
want to,
so uniform form of taxation, you mean like vouchers for schools, or like what are you suggesting? Sorry.
That was kind of a separate policy proposal.
Sorry.
But as governor, you would have potentially that tool in your tool belt to propose to maybe have a private voucher for the full expense that's currently spent on each student, which is $30,000, and not just a $10,000 voucher that I've heard through the grapevine being proposed.
Yeah, so no, I actually, it's interesting you mentioned that. So when Chris Christie was governor of New Jersey, there was a proposal of State Senator Mike Doherty of an equal funding formula, and he wanted to cap the amount of money to be spent per student. I think it was $30-some thousand. I could be wrong about the amount, but even by capping that amount with the equal funding formula proposal by State Senator Mike Doherty, most of the municipalities would have seen a pretty significant reduction in property tax. I mean, it would have definitely been noticeable. So I think that actually, even to go as low as that, I mean, would definitely be a benefit. I'm not somebody that would say that, well, if somebody doesn't support what I support all the way, that I would be against that. Anything that, in my opinion, would lead to the reduction of property taxes for individuals in the United States is something that I would support. So vouchers would be something where the government would be, my understanding is, taking the money from the we have to take the money from the people, and so that the parents can send them to the schools of their choice. That is something I already support, because I actually support letting the parents to send their kids to public schools across the municipal lines. So I'm very much in favor of that. And if we do that, then I think a lot of the parents would benefit from it. Imagine parents sending their kids to, any school they like. Doesn't matter where it would have to be, where it would be. I think that would actually, please, I think, quite a lot of parents. So I'm definitely 100% in favor of school choice in that sense.
Maybe we could let the parent approve some suggestions by the student through some type of technology.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something that parents want to have the students have their children make those decisions, I think that would be great. Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, obviously, the parents are the ones who are in charge of the children, and I'm sure that something like that would if it's done on a voluntary basis, I have no issues with that. I think that certainly would be out of the state control, and people want to do that on a local level. Sure.
I also just want to touch on something you said about user fees. How are they different? I guess than socialist, but we already have examples of user fees, like our state parks. Not only do they get federal funding and state funding, but they also charge an entrance fee, and they also charge for rooms or campsites or whatever that you're going to use there. But an example of how it's unfair currently, for example, I currently can't afford health insurance for myself because it's like $700 a month for one person, and I'm a healthy person. I don't need healthcare regularly. But because I don't have health insurance in New Jersey, I get penalized in my income tax every year. Minimum, I think it's $800 for not having insurance, so that I can help pay for other people's insurance, right? So that's one example of how our tax system in the state right now is unfairly penalizing people who don't have the money in the first place to pay for other people who also don't have the money. So.
Yeah, the Shared Responsibility Act of the Affordable Care Act.
Mm-hmm.
It's a terrible thing. All right, so I'll move on to the next question. That was really interesting. Thank you so much. So this next one is about Netflix in Monmouth County at Fort Monmouth. They just received a $387 million tax break through the NGA EDA Aspire program, plus an additional 40% tax credit for future film and digital media production expenses. So long as they employ at least 35 people here for 10 years. Do you think that's fair or worth it if not?
Well, I don't, generally, well, not generally, I actually don't support the state government giving any type of tax breaks, because to me that shows favorable treatment to certain corporations. So, I mean, I'm against corporate welfare. I'm also against the state government kind of favoring any types of groups. I also believe that any types of reduction of taxes have to follow with the reduction in spending. I believe the same on a federal level, state level, any level. So no, I would not be supporting of that. I would be supportive, however, of making the state of New Jersey more business friendly in terms of getting some of the regulations that make it more difficult for people to start their own businesses. That's something that I would definitely be in favor of.
Dustin, do you have any reflections on Netflix deal? I mean, it's out of your district, but
Sure. Since you're asking, that is an astronomical number for a very small number of employees, and I don't. Do I think that that's fair or worth it? No, I don't. And the correct way that this should have been done, or should be done, is that we should reduce the taxes completely, so that not only does it create an environment that would invite someone like Netflix to come here, but anyone else. So that kind of tracks the same way, like Vic is saying here. We need to make it more business friendly. When we have a situation like that, we do something like that, that tells me that they're just going to get the money from somewhere else, and most of the time it ends up being my own pocket. So the right way to do it is to get rid of cut the spending back, make an environment that is attractive to a company like Netflix, and then you don't have to give anyone anything. They just want to come here and do business because we have the most business friendly environment, the place that they obviously could be the most profitable. It costs them the least amount of money to be here, and you do that by reducing spending and reducing taxes.
If I could, thank you, Dustin. If I could add one more thing, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also have high corporate tax rates here in New Jersey. I believe some of the highest in the country. And when they mean by corporations, they talk about a pretty small number of people, what they consider to be a corporation, and a pretty small amount of money. So if they actually even decrease that or lower that, that would create a more favorable environment for a whole lot of people. That way it wouldn't seem like they're favoring one specific group. That's the issue I have. It's like, okay, Netflix, we love you, Netflix. We're going to do something really nice for you. How about helping out the people of New Jersey, regardless what company they work for? That's what I support. I don't support any kind of state favoritism towards any specific company or corporation.
That's interesting. I just hope you're not favoring businesses when you do that, and you might come around to leveling it with a national sales tax in New Jersey. But the user fee, that might be one industry at a time. So I hope you can come around on that too.
But well, no, I do support user fees. So that's
no, I mean that they might favor one industry at a time.
Oh.
If or actually all industries except one, if you're adding the fee to a road specifically instead of all income.
Well, the user fees would replace the taxes. That's the idea.
Like right now we have an income tax and toll fees, so we're both having a user fee and an income tax that's supposed to help pay for roads. Why do we need both of them? So basically, we'd just be removing the income tax and then the toll fee, which we already have, and on top of that, we also have a gas tax. So we're getting charged 3 times basically for roads. Why? Right? We don't need 3 types of revenue to fix our roads.
Plus registration fees and what goes with that. I can tell you that New Jersey's registration fees are astronomical. compared to many other states. I lived in Pennsylvania. I paid $24 a year to register a motorcycle. In New Jersey, it's almost 70, and this is 20 miles away. I used a lot of the same roads. 20 miles away, I paid 40 some odd dollars less for a motorcycle, which causes little to no wear on the roads. So it's not just the gas, it's not just the tolls. You're also paying that registration as well.
I just want you to imagine for a second if Zoran wins in New York City and his grocery stores start funneling money to other expenses other than the grocery store itself. Some people might consider that commingling. Like imagine actually if we had to spend money on doctors in the medical industry complex with Medicaid and Medicare, that the taxes are taken specifically from doctors and their sales instead of everyone. If they're the ones who are gaining so much income inequality, it's like 10 times faster for the U.S. and even in the UK, their income inequality for doctors over everyone else is increasing 3 times more than 1990. The difference is so.
Well, I mean, I would hope with healthcare. I mean, not that the question has been asked, but no, I would welcome a system where individuals make direct payments to doctors, where they know ahead of time how much a service costs. That way, there's no incentive to jack up the prices, and with the response of "What do you care? Your insurance is going to cover it." I'd like the patients to know how much their services cost ahead of time, so they can pick and choose which doctor they want to choose and what services they want to use. But that's a whole other topic.
Just as an example of like comparing different medical fields and the huge like fee discrepancy is like I went to the ER because I was bitten by an animal, and literally when you get bitten by an animal, there's very little they can do. They washed my foot. Literally, that's what they put my foot in a bucket, which is fine. That's what you're supposed to do. And then they gave me one antibiotic pill, right? That's all they did. And that was almost $800, right? Now, I also had surgery on my mouth this year, and this was literally surgery. Like they opened up my mouth, right? And it was $90, right? And so it's because the dentistry industry is not heavily regulated through insurance and all that, and so it's cheaper to reflect what a patient can actually afford out of their pocket as opposed to other medical fields.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of insurance, I can tell you that. But go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons for the skyrocketing healthcare costs. When the insurance companies got in bed with the government, that's what happened.
Yeah, we've created a lack of competition, and that's why you see that disparity between dental and medical. Medical is very, very heavily regulated. Dental is nearly so much, and that's why the price is lower. And you lack the competition in the medical field. In many cases, you'll actually notice that they call them like health systems, but it's more of a cartel than anything. And they use the certificate of need laws like we have here in New Jersey to kind of push out competing cartels from a particular area. And so you have a situation where you only have one hospital available, or you only have a certain number of doctors, because that cartel is now able to essentially control the market in that area, because the government says, well, you're not allowed to build any more hospitals. We've decided this is enough hospitals. We don't need any more. And that's one of the reasons that the costs go up, is because they make it artificially scarce. And so you're forced to, use whoever's the most convenient to you. It's harder to travel, especially in the case of an emergency, like in Lana's case where she was bitten by an animal. You can't say to travel the next county over or something because they like that hospital better, their rates are lower. You have to go to whoever's closest, and in this case you only have one option. There's no other option there.
Right. And if I could add, no, thank you for that, Dustin. And this becomes an even bigger issue in states like Georgia, where the population is not so densely populated, when the state is not so densely populated, where traveling to another hospital can mean literally like traveling 1 hour. And in such cases, that becomes certainly a burden for the patient.
All right. I'm going to move on because we have a little more than a half hour.
Right.
On immigration enforcement, would you direct state and local police to comply with federal law, but not actively collaborate with ICE? And stepping back, do you see population growth as an economic good because of added labor supply? Or do you think those benefits are offset by the unescapable truth about the property scarcity effect? Even if labor supply competition does deflate prices of material resources that go into the buildings that go on top of the increasingly scarce property. In other words, is it worth it if the goal of economic theory is more competitive prices? Immigration.
Right. Thank you. Well, no, and thank you for that question. Yeah, I don't support immigration because of I want to see lower prices. That's the reason why I do support it is because, well, number one, my view is that certainly the federal government has made a huge mess out of the whole immigration system. They essentially incentivize undocumented immigration and they incentivize deportations. And because of this policy where they made it nearly impossible to legally come to the United States, because the only way you can legally come here is through the family members or the restricted work visas, which are, for a quote unquote unskilled labor, it's 10,000 per year. Because of that, they have incentivized undocumented immigration. I mean, this is exactly what happened, especially with Bill Clinton after 1996, where he made it where Congress voted on a bipartisan basis to make it illegal to get legalized through employers and family members. And so when that happened, the number of undocumented immigrants in the United States has skyrocketed because the people, instead of returning back, for example, from Mexico, most of them after a few years decided to stay in the U.S. And so this actually incentivizes people to stay in the U.S. And increase the undocumented immigration. So my position, though, is that because what the federal, not because of just what the federal government has done, but my view is that if somebody wants to come to New Jersey and work, I believe they should be allowed to, as long as they go through the background checks, right? So, I mean, we've had this system on a national level over 100 years ago, certainly in the early 1900s, before the 1924 Immigration Act that all but stopped legal immigration to the United States, certainly has led to such atrocities as the family of Anne Frank not being able to come to the United States, where, of course, pretty much almost the entire family was killed by the Nazis. I think they should have been allowed to come to the United States, but thanks to the restrictive immigration policy, they were prohibited from doing so. But I support making it easier for people to come to the United States. And just to be clear, when people say no to that, well, it's pretty clear that make it obvious. They say they don't want more immigrants, and I just don't think that's right. I mean, I think that if somebody wants to come here and work here, why should that people be turned away? Certainly a lot of the people who believe that they should be turned away, their ancestors came here to the United States, and we went by public opinion, for example, they would not have been able to come here. And all those people arguing that all these people should not be able to come to the US, well, all those people would not have been even born to argue that point. So I do believe that there's got to be some sense when it comes to immigration policy. And yes, I do believe that just like 120 years ago, somebody wants to come to New Jersey and that person has proven to be a nonviolent person, someone who has not committed any violent crimes or any kind of, if that person is not a threat, let the person to go through background checks and then let that person to come to live and work by themselves or with their family members. So I do believe in that. I don't understand this whole idea that people that are providing services for the people of New Jersey, people who are producers and people who are consumers should be kicked out where they haven't, according to the ICE's own statistics, most of those people have not been convicted of violent crimes. 93% have not been convicted of violent crimes. Over about 71% have not been convicted of any crime. So why shouldn't those people be not allowed to live and work here and provide services for the people of New Jersey? When you remove those people, as it has been done, we've seen prices increase on the people of New Jersey. prices on vegetables have increased nationally by about 39% in the month of July. And that has not just been has occurred because of the tariffs, but also because a whole bunch of people were removed from the agricultural field, where about 30% are undocumented immigrants, and from other fields as well. And other people have just stopped showing up. So I think there's got to be a more humane way to deal with it without uprooting the lives of the people of New Jersey and the American people in general. So yes, those would be the immigration policies I would support. And essentially, when it comes to the federal government, yes, I would not have the federal government follow the immigration law in the state of New Jersey. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution does not mention immigration, only naturalization. And so I would have the state government deal with immigration on the state level. So, like I said earlier, anyone who is a nonviolent person should be able to come here. And the federal government certainly was not even involved in immigration until the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1800s. And the Supreme Court, even though it made it clear that it couldn't find words immigration in the Constitution, still gave the federal government the ability, the power to control immigration. But even though they said it's not in the Constitution, they use commerce, they use foreign policy, they use other justifications. But the reality is that if you look at the Declaration of Independence, one of the grievances that people had against the British government was that it was restricting immigration. So no wonder that people who wrote the Constitution had no desire for the federal government to control immigration. We were a young country, so there was definitely this idea that why should the federal government restrict immigration? So we would have less people. Well, that doesn't make any sense for a new starting country. Have as few people as possible. So this all actually makes sense. Now, when it comes to your question about the, I believe the other part was, correct me if I'm wrong, was about let's see, prices falling down. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when it comes to price fall down, so this is what I do see when it comes to immigration. So I think that as more people come in, certainly it doesn't matter, by the way, if they come from another state or another country. I mean, if there's going to be more competition, I certainly would expect prices to fall down. But who would benefit from that? The consumer would benefit. So I would definitely welcome that. I mean, because the way I see it, why should the government be in charge or doing anything about benefiting some corporations, producers that are small in number, when that would actually hurt us, the consumers? Why should the state be involved in supporting their cronies, to make sure they get more money at our expense, at the expense of us consumers? That's why, of course, I'm not a fan of higher tariffs. I know that's a national issue, but because you essentially are raising taxes on the American people to benefit a few selected corporations. So if anyone would like to add more to that, more than welcome to.
Yeah, we're all consumers, but we're not all employed. So that's very important to understand.
Yeah, anyone like to add anything more than welcome?
No, I think you covered basically everything. But I will say a lot of people, they'll say, well, you have to follow federal law. ICE is a federal agency, but it exists unconstitutionally, right? I don't think people realize that the federal government is not allowed to do things against the Constitution, even though they do all the time. And because of that, as governor, Vic wouldn't be obligated to follow federal laws that are unconstitutional, because as governor, he would be, loyal to the Constitution, not the federal government necessarily.
Right. Thank you for that. And also, I'd like to add that nullification is as American as American pie. Even the Real ID Act, right? Real ID Act was actually nullified for a number of years by a whole bunch of state governments who refused to enforce it, including the state government of Montana and others. And this is the reason why it was not being enforced, for the last, I don't know how many years when it passed Congress. I mean, and was signed into law, because state governments just refused to enforce it. And you definitely see that when it comes historically, when it comes to federal marijuana laws and a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, in New Jersey, we have the Second Amendment. We have sanctuary municipalities on a state level regarding the Second Amendment. So, yeah.
Just to keep it on immigration, like, what if it was just extradition laws? Could that cover the criminal immigrants that exist and do just naturalization by the state?
Well, yeah, no, I definitely support extradition. I mean, this is an extradition between other countries. I definitely think that should be followed for sure. Yes, that's not, if a criminal is hiding in the United States, yeah, I wouldn't want the U.S. government is like, oh, no. Anyone who comes in here, it's a safe haven. I don't want the United States government to turn into the Israeli government, where pretty much anyone who commits a crime in another country can then move into Israel, and then because there are no extradition laws, they get, like, for most of the cases, they get to stay there, and the Israeli government doesn't really return anyone. I mean, I don't want the United States government to turn into that.
Yeah, it should definitely cover what the federal immigration law does for us now in regards to keeping criminals out, I guess. I'm going to move on unless Dustin wants to say something about immigration. Yeah.
I do have something I'd like to point out is that I don't have a true national identification card outside of my passport. My state level ID serves as that shows that I'm a resident of New Jersey, and by virtue an American. You know, I legally am in the United States. Passports are a somewhat new thing, so you know, and I should be allowed to travel using just my state ID because it says that, you know, I live in New Jersey. As far as the state is concerned, each individual state should be able to make the decisions on who they allow to live there and who they don't. And if for whatever reason, my state right now is New Jersey, they decide that I can't live here for some reason, then they could, you know, say you're not allowed in, and then I would have to go find another state to live in. The federal government can't force New Jersey to allow me to remain here, and that's how I feel about it, and that applies to immigrants coming into our country as well. If a given state says that we'll allow people that are undocumented to stay in that state, then that's the case. The federal government doesn't get to come in and individual states to expel people or to comply with whatever their demands are, because there's nothing in the Constitution that gives them the right to do that in the first place.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that's why people should be less supportive of real IDs, these federal IDs that are slowly becoming replacing state IDs. And on top of that, just recently, Murphy signed into law a virtual ID for New Jersey, and that should be even more terrifying because that means if something is not tangible, it's not in front of you, you can't keep it in your pocket, they can turn it off whenever they want. They can just make it disappear, and all of a sudden you're not a resident of New Jersey, you're not a U.S. citizen. And if you think that ICE will not do that, they will. They absolutely will.
Oh, yeah, sure. They will. All right. This next one's about free speech. So the federal laws currently prevent censorship by the government, but many people today are at risk of losing their jobs or other opportunities simply for sharing political views online. Do you believe civil rights protections should extend to political opinions in order to safeguard the public square? And this is a state issue too.
Sure. So I do believe that certainly when it comes to government, where people working for the government, the free speech protections should apply to that, because this is where, I strongly believe that the state government should not be discriminating against people based on their political opinions. That should not be taking place. The free speech certainly is extended when it comes to the government, people working for the government. When it comes to private companies, I would think that something like this would have to be included in a contract between the employers and the employers. So a person cannot be wrongfully terminated if it's not spelled out in the contract that a person who has been terminated then can sue if the terms of the termination for supposedly free speech violations are not included in the contract.
Yeah, and this can be brought up like any other civil rights case through a comparison and not certain proportional representation that diversity espouses and was kind of infected the Civil Rights Act, essentially, if you might agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that private companies, I think they should be able to set up their own policies. But it's like I view it the same way when it comes to discrimination based on race or gender or religion. The state government, I strongly believe, should not be discriminating against people based on those categories. Whether or not but that is different, of course, when it comes to you can have a private company that wants to, let's say, hire African Americans, Latinos, women, and whatnot. And I would really hate for the federal government, and you have had executive orders by President Trump saying that he opposes private companies hiring people on the basis of race and gender. But why shouldn't companies be able to do that? If it's a private company, why should they should not be able to do that? I don't understand. They should be able to hire who they want. Certainly, the federal government shouldn't be telling private companies who that they cannot hire women or Latinos or African Americans. Or I mean, I don't see what is wrong with and a lot of there are plenty of companies that do want to hire have a more diverse workforce. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Why should people be punished for expressing tolerance and perhaps wanting to have a more diverse workforce? That's the way I see it.
Yeah, let's look at the case of Portnoy's website. He fired an intern for posting on the business's slug, so on their account. Now that should be up to the owner of the company for sure, right? But personal accounts, maybe we should try and protect that from discrimination, which is proven by a comparison to someone who got the job with a similar skill, and maybe that should be declared in the Civil Rights Act, and maybe that's what Charlie Kirk had a problem with.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, I have no problem with DEI if in the sense that, just to be clear, if people want to have a more diverse workforce, I really don't see any issue with that. I really think that, for example, in a particular area, you have a large percentage of the population significant that's represented by Latinos or African Americans. Why shouldn't that business owner be hiring African Americans if that person thinks that they can relate better to the general population of that particular area? I think that just actually makes complete sense from a business perspective. That is, yeah.
Yeah, I think what most libertarians have a problem with is not necessarily the concept of DEI or a company having DEI policies. It's the state enforcing it. It's the state forcing you to have DEI policies. And I agree with Vic that private organizations can hire and fire as they want. But for example, if I applied for a job and it said that in this clause, there's a morality clause and you can't say, X, Y, and Z on even your personal pages, or I actually saw a job that says that if you get divorced, you'll get fired. I wouldn't even pursue that job because I'm not going to be somebody who's going to watch what I'm saying on my Facebook for fear of losing my job, and I'm not going to be part of an organization that's going to be watching, what I'm doing in my personal time and then judging me for it. So I wouldn't even apply to that job. And I think that way we can control or have an influence of what businesses are doing, because if an entire industry is only hiring people who signed this morality clause but nobody wants to, well, they're never going to get employees or employees that stay for very long, and that business is going to go under. That's going to be a much more efficient way of punishing or supporting businesses that have policies that as a society we want to support, rather than getting the state involved and doing having these policies enacted through state force.
Yeah, this this is a law that allows civilians to sue, and so it's not enforced by. It's not the state doesn't get anything from it, but unless they're interested in that. But it now would be a good time to mention that I just launched HortmansMurderers.com. Those other sites, they took theirs down because they're afraid to get sued, but it's all disclaimer, and I think it'll pass muster. It's about Charlie Kirk and civil rights. So the next question, rapid fire, if you don't mind, just to wrap up the last 15 minutes. Now, some of the rest of my questions are long, but they're framed for a yes or no response. So without much explanation required. Uh, unless you want to provide one, of course, you can go ahead. So um, please respond briefly. Do you think the burden of proof in a defamation case should be on the defendant or the plaintiff?
Hmm. I would say
It's a surprise question for the audience.
no. That's so. If it's a defamation, I would say that the person that that is a good question. I would say.
I would,
Ignore the current law, maybe, but yeah, it's up.
if you're still thinking on it, Vic, I think I would. I think I have my answer. And it would be the burden of proof would be on the person who's claiming that they're defamed.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. That actually would make sense.
I agree.
Right. Oh, awesome! I totally agree. I think it's the other way around right now, but maybe that's something we would change. So the next question, it's a little longer for me, but it's still a yes or no, probably. 16,594 New Jerseyans died during the first half year of COVID. There were 83,500 Americans among the 300 and 1,400 excess deaths in the U.S. between March and August 2020 that actually were expected to die from population growth and the current life expectancy at the time. So that's about a little less than a third. Do you think this barely significant number at 6.43% adjusted excess mortality or additional deaths for the year compared to the previous one, accounting for old age population growth, coupled with injury from ventilators, a relatively significant amount of obese 80s babies, paralytic polio, now being called multiple sclerosis, but the injury itself never went away. Our evolutionary traits would not benefit us through the creation of viruses as an obligate parasite generally, as the scientific etiological status quo would narrate. And sewage used to be thrown into the streets before vaccines were introduced. Do you think all these things opens the door to the possibility that viruses are actually harmless and something else is causing illness like bacteria?
Wow. Okay.
That's quite a question. Can you narrow it down to what it
Yeah.
is that you're asking? Are you asking us if our opinion is that COVID, the COVID death? Well, the people that are claiming the deaths that happened during COVID were attributed to COVID or something else, or are you asking us if we believe that vaccines aren't necessary, or are those both questions in that statement?
It wasn't so much about vaccines, more about the cause of virus. Namely, I just don't think it makes sense that viruses were evolved by us as the only parasite without an independent ancestor. So from the beginning of viruses, it's always been a host, requiring a host. So it evolved as a evolutionary trait of us to kill each other with. I don't think that's how evolution works. But do you think that those that died during COVID in excess of the population growth of old people, which was about a third of excess mortality totally, do you think they might have been injured by ventilators, which some medical professionals think? Do you think maybe the virus wasn't actually the killer and it was these multitudes of other factors that people could rewind on, I guess?
Okay, I think I understand what you're asking now. You're asking is basically were the deaths really due to COVID or something else, or because there was a conversation of as to whether like you said, whether what they were treating people with COVID with was actually the correct treatment for what was happening, a virus versus a parasite versus a whatever, or was it actually killing them? I wouldn't discredit it necessarily. Because I do think there was a lot of information suppression happening during that time. A lot of doctors who were questioning things and simply looking for answers were fired from their jobs, and their videos were taken down, and they weren't invited to these discussions. And so I don't know, and I don't think any of us actually know, because we weren't given the opportunity to know what experts in these fields were figuring out or trying to figure out because of state suppression. So I don't know, maybe, but what I do know is that during that time, I did not support the state suppression of these doctors trying to ask questions so that we could know the answer.
That's great answers. Do you have something to say?
No, I agree. No, I understand that there's some people had comorbidities. I mean, that is clear. And then there were some people that were killed by ventilators, without a doubt. I mean, I don't think that's even debatable. That did happen. So yeah.
And also, I think we talk about the deaths that happened and why they died, and like we just did. But also, what about all the people that are currently living with, permanent injuries because of a vaccine or because of COVID itself, right? They're also living with those injuries from you just having COVID, maybe because of comorbidity or other factors. But we also kind of forget about those people that are currently alive and living with injuries from what happened, and we're not allowed to talk about it, right? So
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear you guys are true libertarians and want to keep the conversation going, especially when the proof is not cut and dry, like seeing a virus enter a cell under an electron microscope. That's never been done on video. So we'll wait for that. But the last question, it's a simple one. If and when elected governor or assembly person, what's one reform you'd prioritize that aligns with libertarian principles? It can be anything that I said, or you could read, or something I forgot to say that you want to press upon your audience.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, thank you. And this is something where I'd like to work. I mean, definitely on a state level, but I'd also like to see done at a local level. So zoning restrictions that exist on a state level and many of them on a local level. I think this is extremely important. The cost of housing in New Jersey is highly expensive. I mean, how is it highly expensive? So I'd like to work with the local governments to change some of the zoning regulations that prevent people from living in tiny homes that would be otherwise affordable for a lot of people in New Jersey, where you cannot have them anywhere in our state. Also, to allow people to live in RVs, to have tiny homes that come without without taxes.
And HOAs.
Homes. Yes.
And HOAs, maybe.
I'm sorry, what?
We could get.
Yeah. So without the impact fees on tiny homes. So I'd like to see the impact fees gone. That's the taxes on smaller houses. So I'd like to see that gone. And also I think if we do that, there will be less homeless people in New Jersey. We have more homeless people every year in the state of New Jersey. The number one reason for homelessness is the lack of affordable housing. Is one of the parties dies, and then the other person cannot afford paying for the house. So we can see the reduction of homeless population. I also love to see some of the abandoned residential and commercial buildings be used to house the homeless. I would also like to see that happen as well. So definitely working with local governments to change some of the zoning regulations to make housing more affordable, so that more people would stay in New Jersey instead of leaving, because the more people leave New Jersey, the more also the rest of us have to pay the taxes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Dustin or Lana?
Yeah, I can chime in. So the one thing that I would focus on, spend a lot of time focusing on, is Second Amendment rights and the way that they are treated in this state. As we found is across the board, is that New Jersey's restrictions on Second Amendment rights haven't done very much as far as stopping violent crime and gun crime, which is what they bill them to do. And what it's become in this state is more like a financially punitive system where you have to pay the state in order to exercise something that is supposed to be a natural right that is laid out in our federal constitution. And the Supreme Court has upheld multiple times, even recently. So what ends up happening is the way that it's structured is that it excludes the poor and those with less means from being able to exercise a right that everyone should have the ability to exercise. And there's been a number of studies done, another one most recently, that found that African Americans are denied the right to carry a concealed weapon in New Jersey at a much higher rate than anyone else. And the reasons that they were being denied that right are undisclosed or like undetermined. It's not anything specific, like they failed a background check for having some criminal conviction from earlier in the past or something like that. It's always using the excuse that it's not in the best interest or in the best interest of the greater good, which is extremely vague. And that entire system is designed to essentially make it financially impossible for the average person to be able to exercise their rights. And by virtue of its existence has made it harder for minorities to exercise that right.
I can't agree anymore. It's just does the government want to put certain people in danger? Maybe the solution is all or nothing, because you can't ignore what's going on in Australia. You can only throw a knife so accurately, but yeah, all or nothing for me. Everyone or no one, I mean, gets the right. And I don't know. What? Let's end on. What do you think about automatic? Should that be restricted, or
I think
Was it? Oh, go ahead.
automatic firearms? Should
fire,
that be illegal to sell?
absolutely not. They should be completely legal. And the current, and this is on a federal level that's actually regulated. The
Right.
NFL is unconstitutional, as well as so the National Firearms Act, the Gun Control Act, all of these things are unconstitutional. The Second Amendment is extremely clear, and the regulations on those types of firearms and accessories like silencers, um, short-barreled rifles, and things like that are all completely unconstitutional, and there should be no restrictions whatsoever.
Because of 3D printers, right? I mean, that's going to happen anyway.
There's anyone with a file, anyone with a 3D printer, anyone with a drill press can do these things. So all that they're really doing is just creating more bureaucracy. It's nothing more than a tax, and you cannot tax rights. So no, that can all go, and automatic weapons and things like that should be just as accessible as any other firearm.
I think there's some restrictions in certain states for flamethrowers, which is an interesting tidbit, but
not New Jersey.
You knew it.
Yeah,
that's good. So that's all the questions I prepared. If nothing changes, I'll be voting for Vic, because I can't vote for anyone else here in Monmouth County. But this was so much fun, and I learned so much. It really enforced my libertarian beliefs. And yeah, I guess we have a minute left. What do you guys gonna want to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Thank you for coming on and asking these questions, because we do go live fairly often, and some people leave questions in the chat, but it's always nice to have an actual guest that's going to have like a back and forth with us and really have a conversation, because that's what these live streams are designed to do. But I'm glad it was a good experience. Thank you for voting for Vic.
Thank you.
He definitely deserves your vote. He's great. He's definitely libertarian, truly in his beliefs and his values. And we will be going live again next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. However, Thursday, Vic is going right. It's next Thursday, not the next one. He's going to a in-person candidate forum, and we're gonna watch it on the live stream as opposed to doing something like this. But if anybody watching has any questions, you can email me, message me, and we'll answer at the next live stream. If you want to be a guest, just like Nick was, let me know. Wednesday and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if you guys have nothing else to say, good night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Nick.
My pleasure.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Nick.
guys.
Thank you. Night.